この程度じゃ動じないか。本気で行くぜ。
Round 1, fight.
Hello, this is Level Up. This is Brandon Sung here with another retro game review. This time I have Capcom vs SNK Millennium Fight 2000. There is only two versions of this game. There's the Pro Edition and the Standard Regular Edition. Today I'm only going to talk about the Regular Edition, primarily because the Pro Edition only really does one thing: add two characters, Joe Higashi and Dan Hibiki. Now I know some of you want to see Dan Hibiki, but I'm just here to actually just talk about the game, so that doesn't matter. This is actually not the first CVS game in the series. In fact, SNK started with the SNK vs Capcom Cards Fighters Clash, as well as the Match of the Millennium series on the Neo Geo Pocket. That played very differently from this game, and so Capcom decided to take on their take on this series with their own Capcom vs SNK Match of the Millennium, for in this case, the Dreamcast. The PlayStation version is really crappy with a lot of lag, some missing animations, and some characters really just don't play the same way that the arcade edition does. In terms of plot, this game is pretty simple. Basically, we have, in the year 2000, a special martial arts event between the two most powerful world organizations, the Garcia Financial Clique and the Masters Foundation. They hope that in this collaboration, they can come together and create a extremely awesome martial arts tournament that would hopefully ease political conflicts between the two, and in which they named it Millennium Fight 2000. The game engine-wise, this game is an SNK-style 4-button fighter, which is a bit out of the ordinary from a Capcom fighter. Basically, you only have your light and heavy punch buttons and light and heavy kick buttons. It can throw off a lot of current Street Fighter players, but after a while you do kind of get used to it, because a lot of the time directional inputs can also vary and change your attacks. There's two particularly interesting things about this game. The first thing is the SNK and Capcom groove system. The groove system determines what kind of meter you have and how you gain your meter. The Capcom meter version is the Street Fighter Alpha-esque type system, where basically you gain meter by hitting, blocking, just playing the game in general, and it gains quite fast, and you have access to a level 1, 2, and 3 super. The SNK style, on the other hand, is not quite the same. You basically have to charge your meter until it maxes out, then you can use your super. However, once you get to low health, you can actually access level 3 supers, which is a bit more of a, shall we say, desperation type move. The ratio system is probably one of the more controversial parts of the game, because most people, when they think of a crossover game, they want to play without any boundaries, their favorite characters, or combinations. However, Capcom decided to opt in for a ratio system in which certain characters have certain strengths, so they decided, hey, why don't we make Evil Ryu 4 bars of ratio and maybe Sakura for 1. So that means this game runs on the maximum of 4 bars of ratio gauge, meaning you can only put Evil Ryu on your team and that's it. It kind of sucks, but you're really limited in terms of team output. So you have 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, and 4 bar type people that you can get. The most balanced of them is usually the 2 bar ratio characters, and then you have more of the 4 bar ratio characters, and then basically the boss characters are 3 and 4. Characters wise, this game, even though it's called Capcom vs SNK, it feels more like a Street Fighter vs KOF game. It might be kind of disappointing to think about that, but in reality, they're the most popular franchises in their respective companies, so you can't really blame them for doing that. Graphically, I'm going to compare this to CVS 2. I actually like the stages in this game a lot better than in the newer rendition of CVS 2, primarily because of the stage intros.
I'll tame my hounds with your brow.
Round 1, fight.
I like the train stage in particular, where they're scrolling. There's not a lot of that in CVS 2, where it feels more stationary. There's not a whole lot going on. In CVS 1, there's also, like I said before, the stage intros where they transition really well. Even when you go from the character select screen to the stage, and then back to like the taunts that the characters say after the battle, and then towards the next battle, it always feels like there's a nice, smooth transition. In CVS 2, it doesn't kind of go like that. It kind of just like wipes out and then wipes back in with like a zoom in of a newscast. It's not quite the same feeling. This one actually gives it kind of a nice flow to it. But I do have to say that CVS2 did have some cleaner looking 3D graphics. This one's kind of still muddy, but it can be expected by a game that requires some fast maneuvering, and they don't want to slow down the game in respects of trying to keep the game flowing. Control-wise, this game does feel a bit awkward because if you're a Street Fighter player, you have no medium attack. So what happens is that actually your medium attack comes from sort of a Blaze Blue-esque sort of directional system in order to come up with certain different attacks. So for example, if you want to do your crouching sweep, you have to press crouching heavy forward and heavy kick, and what ends up happening is then you do your sweep. If you just crouch and do heavy kick, you actually don't sweep, you just do your medium attack. Most of the KOF characters play pretty much is exactly the same as their KOF counterparts, primarily because, as it said before, because this is a KOF layout, it's a bit easier for them to work in that respect. Modes wise, it has your standard arcade mode, your versus, your training mode. There's a ratio edit system and a shop where you can buy hidden characters and some new ratios, but it doesn't really add a whole lot. And if you're one of those guys that like to unlock things right off the bat without having to buy things and grind, this can be quite a turnoff. I am personally one of those people, and oftentimes when I go and play a fighting game at somebody's house, I don't want to have to keep bringing a memory card every time I want to go over and get new characters. Learning curve wise, this is pretty much just your standard Street Fighter KOF. If you can't quite get them to those that easily, it's not quite the best game to try to play a beginner at, because of the fact that there is quite a bit going on in this game in terms of like learning supers and all that. So in a general, it's a medium learning curve, I'd say. Overall, this is a nice first attempt at a Capcom fighting game that has both Capcom and SNK characters. But I felt that this game is lacking, that there could be something more. And they definitely did that when they delivered with CVS2, but not this time. This game is kind of broken competitively because of the fact that you can only use a very small pool of characters, and a lot of characters just kind of suck on their own, and which you need to buy EX characters, which usually off the bat you can't get. Overall, I give this game a 6 out of 10. It's a nice game to have in your collection, but if you're a guy who wants to play this game competitively or have a competitive fighting game, I would suggest you skip out on this one.